Ta-da! Welcome.
Hi, everybody. Welcome, and thank you so much for coming to the Halloween in July for the Horror Writers Association, which is our annual event where we're trying to raise money to support the diversity grants that we give out every year. So hopefully you will enjoy this conversation about Asian witchcraft, which is, I may have a personal opinion here, but I think it's the best witchcraft. And witchcraft in general is interesting, and magic and spiritualism are all the things we're going to be talking about today. And these authors, these fine, wonderful people, are in the Coven of the East, which is being edited by Pauline Chow, along with myself. And we're super excited by the stories that came out and the works that we have. And yes, very, very cool project. So I'm going to turn it over. Pauline, do you want to talk about who you are editing this amazing project? And we'll just kind of get it started with a nice casual conversation.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Pauline Chow, and I've been writing for a little bit. And I met Angela also kind of through like support network. She was my Horror Writer Association mentor, and she helped me shepherd my first novel, Chasing Moonflowers, to being, which is out now. And it's a little bit witchy, a little bit horrorcraft. It's a little bit Chinese herbs and connecting to my roots from Hong Kong. But I really enjoy, writing about my experience, but also digging really deep into other aspects of, I guess, our collectiveness, which I've identified as, ancestral magic or ancestral connections. And so then when I met Angela, we talked a lot about like magic and what that means to us. And I feel like in a lot of contexts in which I talked and learned about magic, it was kind of more like inaccessible or kind of like something that wasn't supposed to be part of our lives. But then after getting kind of in touch with writing, my creative side, I felt like it wasn't. It's accessible to everyone in any shape and form that you choose to bring it into your life. And it could be a big deal or can not be a big deal. You can say like a little prayer every day and that's your magic, and that's great. So I wanted to kind of bring that idea to like fiction, nonfiction, hybrid, and have our collective voices come together and provide that as an outlet in many different forms, like fantasy, horror, nonfiction, essay, like and have that be available to people who are interested. Awesome. And then and next, I guess I'll pick who's next. I'll pick Wen.
Hi. Let's see. So I am Wen. I have been writing. Let's see. My degree was in creative writing at school, and then I realized I had to get a real job because I graduated right after the last recession, and so I put that on hold for a bit. And then 2020 happened, and I was just like, you know what? If this is my mortality, I want my obituary to say that I was a writer. So I went back into it and published a bunch of short stories. So hurrah! I don't have a novel out yet like Pauline, but working on getting an agent. Let's see. I've leaned always toward fantasy because I can't play by everybody else's rules. Like I admire like fanfic writers, but I can't play with anybody else's sandbox. I have to play with my own toys. And I've accidentally wandered into horror because my thought is, oh, this is dark, and then my friends read it and they go, no, this is horror now.
Well, awesome, welcome.
Yeah.
And last but not least, Benebell.
Oh.
Hi, Benebell. I'm the author most recently of I Ching the Oracle, where I translated the classical Chinese Book of Changes into English and wrote the cultural and historical commentary around it. Prior to that, I wrote the Tao of Craft on food talismans and Taoist mysticism and magic. And then I think most people probably know me by my debut. You always get pigeonholed by your first book. So my first book was actually in Western esotericism on the tarot. That's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. I'm kind of really curious as to what brought each of us to our practices, however we want to label them. And that's kind of where I always think the beginning is. Like for me, in my family, it was very Christian growing up, and it was like, don't listen to spirits, don't talk to spirits, because the devil will get you. And it wasn't until I had a very real experience with my uncle after he passed that I kind of was like, okay, maybe this isn't something that the devil is coming to find me, but more of a holistic thing to listen to. And that was where I opened up to it and started reading and doing research and things like that. I'm curious, how did each of you kind of find your path to this?
I think for me, magic, or what we refer to as magic, mysticism, I think tends to be a slightly more descriptive, neutral tone term, has always been part of my life. Spirit mediumship, forms of feng shui, and food talisman crafting, all of that has always been part of my life. My parents and my grandparents. And so I actually didn't know that that was not the norm until I entered elementary school in upstate New York, and realized that this is actually very, very abnormal, where you get to know the more Protestant Christianized society and finding ways to reconcile the new world that I was living in with the ways that my parents and grandparents were. And so I think it was until college or my young adulthood that I really returned back to my roots and embraced all of the parts of my legacy.
Amazing. Okay, yeah. Similarly with me, I think, but also not as deep. But my grandmother and my mom was always like practiced ancestral worship, which is very common with Asian families. And then so I thought it was so common that I thought it was like, you know, like normal, but also like not magic. And then recently, this year, I visited my grandmother's ancestral home in Jiangmen or Toisan. And then I don't know, it just lit this like amazing fire in me, and it kind of like brought me back to like, yeah, how amazing this practice actually is, and how it was our traditions. It was that was passed down to us because maybe the magic that really existed had to be hidden. So it was kind of hidden in this mundane practice. So that so essentially it's kept alive for us, and it's there if we want to kind of dig deeper. You know, as we see here, dig deeper into Benebell's wonderful volumes. Because I also grew up as Asian American, and I tried really hard in Chinese school, but I can't really get above like third grade level. So there's no way I could read like any of the ancient books. So I'm so thankful that there's like translations out there and someone like working to pass this knowledge down to like English speaking world.
Yes, I am with you there on the language acquisition. Definitely tried the Saturday school and then 3 years of Chinese at college, which was astonishing again with my name as Wen Yang. And, you know, coming in, and I went to this college had 2 tracks, one for native speakers, one for non-native speakers. And the teacher was just like, "You're obviously in the wrong classroom with that name." And I was like, "Watch me talk." And he was not impressed. He was like, "Why are you making these mistakes?" And the thing is, because my parents are from Winzhou and that they speak Winzonese, but that's not Mandarin. It's close, but it's not comprehensible. So they're like, "Oh, I see why you're making different mistakes than the Americans are." And so yeah, I also appreciate translations of a culture that I can't, you know, tap into the original text.
Yeah, I think that's where well, Pauline and I forgot actually that we were a mentor relationship, Pauline, until you said that. I was like, oh, that's where we met. Because I really feel like we bonded over that conversation of like, what does practice look like and what is spiritualism? And that's kind of where we really were like, okay, we're really good friends and we're working together on this.
Yeah, it was definitely
kind of,
it's definitely was love at first Zoom.
It was. Yeah, and then that's kind of one of the questions that brought us to this is, and I think that started the whole like the Black Cranes and all of that, was the question of, where are the Asians in this? You know, witchcraft is so popular now and so cool, which is weird to me still, because I feel like it's something that we're supposed to keep hidden. But where is our representation in that? And I am speaking as a third Asian, so I'm like Asian light, the Okinawan over here, light flavored. But where do you guys see this in our culture? I mean, one of the reasons why I even became such a huge fan of Benebell was because I was looking at one of the workshops, you know, with everybody on there and all the things that they could do. And I was like, I don't feel any kinship with anybody on here. Person, I really love her. She looks very accessible to me. So where do you guys see that culturally?
I think for starters, culturally, it's really hard to translate and convert the concepts of mysticism in the East and ideas of paganism and witchcraft in the West. And so even terms like which words translate to which words is very difficult. Shaman, witch, what is the word witch? And it's not just Mandarin Chinese, like any of the languages I've ever heard other people from our community talk about, there are no convenient or easy or good translations. And also the practices, I think ancestor worship also looks very different. The concepts are fundamentally very different when you're looking at European pagan cultures and East Asian cultures. And so I think that's a big hurdle. And then the second hurdle is also, I would say, imperialism and colonization. So we do live in a post-colonial mindset where a lot of Asians don't want to partake in that because that has always been associated with the uneducated and the lower class. And so in order to show that you are educated and upper to upper middle class, you have to be Christian, you have to be able to be science-oriented, rational-minded, to adopt the Western Enlightenment era philosophies. And so I think that's a second hurdle, I think.
Yeah, and I think like now people are more open to the conversation of including these countries that they previously thought were like third world, and even like Egyptian culture was kind of seen that way too, but they're also one of the OGs as well. I think also I'm in the United States, so then there is some targeted, I think it's very political and strategic, pointing at certain cultures as just suppress them more than others. Like obviously the Chinese relationship abroad and trade relations, especially now, it's probably like there's a large chunk of the country that looks at the rhetoric and believes it. And so, we grew up with this too, like in the 80s, there was a thing too. And like, I mean, it just like it's an ebb and flow. And then so because of that, I think some of the ideas that are so connected with this this witchiness, witch talk, and like kind of spirituality gets pushed aside, or sometimes translated. It gets like intermediary between something else. It like somebody else has to translate it for them, which isn't bad, but also at the same time, I think like being a witch or practicing these spiritual approaches is holistic. So then, if you're leaving out a big chunk of history, kind of like, kind of takes away some of the holisticness and like the movement of like an energy between, different elements, like kind of takes that away a little bit. Although, I'm hoping our conversation will spark some interest in that direction and anthology too. What about, how about Angela, when you're in Brazil, so what do you see there in terms of like practicing, and then also kind of the Asian diaspora population there?
I actually don't think there is another Asian person, even Asian light or Asian wannabe, anywhere near me. I've seen nobody. But the culture is very, very rich with Umbanda, and then there's some other practices like that. So while it is very predominantly Christian, Catholic, there's a lot of openness to kind of do as you will, and a lot of everybody's practices seem kind of like their business. One thing that I thought was really interesting coming here, and I've read this in somebody's book, and I can't remember now, but I had my practices in the US that I did all the time, and this is what I did, and I felt like I was very connected, and then I came here and I thought, this is going to be even better because it's the jungle, and it's like I'm in the lungs of the world and the heart of the world, and so it's going to be really rich. And it was like everything went silent for me for about 8 months and was really disturbing. And the things that I was doing, I was being told things like the amulet that I wore, don't wear that anymore, that's offensive. Things like that were that little nudging, spirit nudging kind of thing. And I didn't understand. And I finally kind of got rid of everything. I wound up doing ayahuasca and having that kind of spiritual experience. And then it was more the message that there is so much energy and everything here. that it's like you feel muted because there's not one thing that you're listening to and trying to attach to. It's everything. And so it's almost like white noise or too much. And so I had to really get used to that, kind of moving into this area. So it's almost like everybody is spiritual here. And of course, I can't say everybody, especially since I barely speak the language still, but that's my impression of Brazil is there's so much spiritualism that it's almost like normal and everyday for everybody to do like the little practices that in the Western world, we might really think that this is bizarre or wrong or witchy or the devil is going to get you, all the things that, you know, get assumed about that kind of thing. But
And also,
oh, sorry.
Oh, no, I just want to dovetail what you said because and also witchcraft is fundamentally mediumship. And so I think you want to be able to negotiate and harmonize with these spirits of the land, spirits of the region, and even the culture. Cultures create egregores. And so I think to be open-minded and receptive to how you can harmonize who you are and what you've brought to this land with what is already there. I think that's sort of the first step of any witch's work when they move to a new place.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what you're going through.
It was like going blind. It was very sad time. And then being able to waken up to it again, but in a much richer, different way. So happy now, tough times back then. Did we all answer that one? I feel like I didn't hear from Win.
Gosh, I don't I guess I don't know how to answer that. Because I'm thinking back when you were talking about like the so my family is Catholic, but I was like very much of the like, why? Why did we pick that? And I always made the joke that like if we had gone down the hill, we would have joined the Baptists in the Korean church, and I didn't. I was just like, couldn't we gone to the one that's closer to us? My parents are just like, but we're not Korean. I'm like, but are we Catholic though? And because we still had, you know, like the pictures of the great grandparents, right? But we also had the crucifix, but we also had the picture of Mao. Like it was a very, you know, we'll take what you get, what you'll give us, in the way that, like, I went to my first Chinese funeral earlier this year, and it was for my dad's dad, and like there were like so many different customs, and it was really interesting because the funeral parlor was having multiple, you know, ceremonies at a time, and like downstairs they had like it sounded like the opera music, you know, with the drums and then the gongs, and I'm just like, what are they doing? Can we have that? And they're like, no, that's not ours. I'm like, are you sure? I feel like I would like that. And then, you know, what I tried to read up on it to try to understand like what I'm going into. And my cousin's like, just follow along. And I asked my aunt, and my aunt is like, just follow what everyone else is doing. I'm like, this is not helpful. And then, you know, getting to the gravesite, and they're like, all right, don't, you know, turn away when you close the coffin, turn away when you lower the coffin. And I'm like, I've been to like a dozen funerals prior to this. Like, if this was bad, I'm already screwed. and having the like that having the reaction to at a funeral where it is like my people felt entirely different than when it was like, you know, someone through extended family relationship that I was like not familiar with, and then everyone having, you know, the piece of candy, the coin to spend before you get home, the red string on your car. That again, my cousins were like, how long do we leave this on the car? And I was like, let me check with the family, I guess. And you know, my aunt being like, you can take it off when you get home. You could leave it on for a week. And I'm like, okay, but those are very different times, and all of us just trying to like making sure we get things right because it's our people, right? As opposed to, I feel like there certainly wasn't all of that experience when I was attending, you know, the funerals through my husband's family, that I was like, okay, you go and they come. And my dad's like, oh, this was easy. I'm like, it was just 2 days of funeral rites. And he's like, yeah, but in China it would have been 7 or 10 days. I was like, okay, I see your point, sir.
Oh, yeah, that's so interesting. When my grandparents passed away, it was where they did the Buddhist kind of rites, so it's like a little bit less, less steps, like things involved. But then the biggest thing was like when this is really hard too, when someone is dying, actively dying, you're not supposed to make sounds. Like because they believe that if you make a sound and they like their attention gets diverted away from like going to the next life, it affects them. So then so it's kind of like, oh, don't suppress yourself, but don't just and then but someone is dying and you're like, oh my God, what is this? So but I think luckily for that, I read this book called by a Tibetan monk called, oh my God, I'm blanking now, but yeah, it was like it's like a long book about was it the Book of the Dead? Oh yeah, the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying. That's it right there. Yeah. So I read that a long time ago, and I was like, okay, I think I know what to do. And it was like a chanting and meditating. Other than that, you're just telling someone to shut up when someone's dying. It's kind of like really, really intense.
Yeah. No, they were chanting prayers in, I want to say it was Mandarin. And again, I was not familiar with it. I understood it was prayers to the Virgin Mary because they kept saying Maria. And I was just like, okay, but what language did you pull this from? Because we could have done an easier, uh, word for Maria or Mary, right? And I'm like, wait, is the Portuguese? And then like trying to understand how my family got to there. But then also my mom's side is Buddhist. So after we finished with my grandfather's, my mom's side of the family was like, do you want to go see, your grandparents? I was like, yes, let's go. And like it was maybe like a week after the grave cleaning festival. So they were like, sorry, we're late. And then we went to see my grandfather's brother first, and I was like, they burnt incense. I was familiar with that, and then they spoke to him like, well, since you can drive, you can drive grandpa around. I'm just like, where are they driving? Where are they going? Like, what is this all mythology that I have missed out on, and like that I don't know any of these rites? And then going to grandfathers and grandmothers and cleaning theirs, and then as we went back to the car, like bowing at all the graves, being like, I'm sorry, we disturbed you. And I'm like, this may be the most exciting time like in the week for them, just experiencing a lot of people like listening in on other people's business. Like how attentive are they to other people's thing? Like, I don't know. I'm imagining like the incredibly gossipy people that are just like, yeah, I'm just gonna hang around, see what people are saying, what news they're bringing to their loved ones, right?
Funeral rites are so
That's cool.
regional,
Yeah.
right? I noticed that even we can't say, oh, what is a Buddhist funeral like? Or what is a Taoist funeral like? What is a Chinese funeral like? They're so diverse. It's like region to region. And then within the region, so for example, in Taiwan, I can only speak to Taiwan. Is it a Buddhist Taiwanese? Is it Taoist? Or is it one of those, families that kind of mix Taoism and Buddhism? And a lot of times they actually mix Catholicism and Taoism together. And so it's very, very family specific, very region specific. And so I think for our culture, it's really hard to say, oh, this is what the last rites are like. It's very, very diverse.
Yes, I was thinking of that when they were talking about like the placement on the mountain. Like it was like incredibly steep mountain that they buried him, and they're like, "Well, this is good because the water will run off. That way, the dirtiness won't be on him." I'm
yeah,
like,
nice.
but if I'm dead,
Well, he got the baller position then, because it's like
yes,
the water and the slope has to be in a specific position. So nice.
yeah. I was really like, I don't know. I was just hoping like for the real estate of the cemetery. I hope everyone has a direction and they all have space in that direction for them, right? That we're all not being like, oh no, I don't want to be on that side, and forcing someone in the lesser position and like jockeying for who gets where. Like my aunt bought plots for her children, but I'm like, but your children are married and they also have children. Like, how are we all negotiating? Like, well, these are our people. It's like, yes, but they also have people of their own, that they also consider theirs. So
Yeah, that's super interesting because we just visited a Brazilian graveyard this last weekend, like actually like 2 days ago. And what we were noticing is it was up on a mountain, so maybe it was jockeying for the good spot, and they were all facing the sunset. So don't think me too morbid, but we were like, gosh, we want to live here. Can we get like a tiny house in the graveyard? Because this is the best view and it's so pretty. And there was so many little houses where in the US we have the mausoleums. There they were decorated. They even had like little porches so the spirit could go out on the porch and like watch the sunset, I guess. And and little benches to sit in and like visit, very homey and welcoming, which is way different from the graveyards that I've experienced in the West, which is very quiet and reverent and not inviting. You know, if you don't walk in the wrong spot, and here it was so crowded, you were pretty much having to weave among the graves because there's not an inch left. Everything was tiled and built up and stuff. So that's interesting. So now I'm going to think about that next time. Like, who was the most important person? Was the person with the huge, like, replica church mausoleum that we can go and sit in, or?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, like,
I have.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead.
I just thought it was so interesting that like we brought up how funeral rites are so different, and like how even ancestral worship is very different by family, even that, like, you know, I grew up to think that chaos is bad and like neat and tidy and homogeny is good, which is that's like the hallmark of imperialism, of colonialism. And so like I think a lot of like our capitalist systems are head in that direction, and but people are also trying to like push back against that, like, you know, even like organic food, locally grown, you know, things like that. So it's kind of one and the same, some of the movement that's happening with, like, I think like practicing being a witch, but also like the other things that us humans maybe want a little bit more chaos in our lives. I mean, so
I would agree with that. Oh no, it's funny. It actually perfectly segues into the thing that I was going to bring up. And this is a curious thing. I've been reading a lot about I'm actually reading Pathological by Sarah Fay right now, and it talks a lot about the DSM-5. And one of the things, at the same time, just, you know, coincidence or however you want to say, I had another friend that was teaching on the DSM-5 and astrology, like matching up the two. Can this diagnosis match up with something in astrology, which was really interesting. But what she brought up was the DSM-5, and I am not an expert. I'm not giving any kind of advice here at all. But there was a thing in the DSM-5 that said if you hear voices, it is, I cannot remember what you were, but it was like, you know, psychotic or something, unless it's cultural. And I thought that was so interesting, because I was like, then you're saying the voices are actually there, but white people are not allowed to hear them? Like, you know what I mean? I was like, how can it be correct for, if it's culturally correct, but then if it's not, then they're not? They're like, how can we put a judgment on that? I'm still working that one out, but I'm curious to hear what you guys think of it.
Isn't it like baseball players like have, you know, lucky rituals, right? Or lucky items, or you know, and then also like how at what point does it divert into OCD, right? Where you're just like, this needs to be done or else the world will be in chaos. It's just like yeah.
I don't know anything about DSM-5, but my perspective on hearing voices or clairaudience, clairvoyance, any of the aspects of hearing sounds or seeing things that aren't there, is that everybody is born a little bit intuitive, and we've all, even the most rational skeptic, has had that feeling where someone's watching them, or you feel something behind your back, there's something prickly. And I think we are really incredible as humans. We can train ourselves to block out things. We can train ourselves to focus or not focus in the ways that we want. And I think our society, in some societies, especially in the West, have trained people to not pay attention to those voices, or to not lean into the different sensations of energy around them that probably are different from what's normally there. Whereas other cultures, if you grow up in that culture, they do embrace that. They teach you how to harmonize that with what you do see, the material world. And so I think in Taoist mysticism, you've always learned to pay attention to what's not there and what's kind of out of sync, a little bit out of harmony, and how to harmonize it with the material and what you do see. So I think maybe that's the only way to explain what you were reading. I think different cultures have different ways of coaching people into either ignoring those sounds, and others teach you to embrace it, lean into it, and learn how to integrate it into your everyday life.
Yeah, I wonder if that cultural exception, does it exist in other definitions? I don't know. That's one of my questions I would ask.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, and it's I think it's two U.S. people, two Americans that came up with the DSM-5. Don't
Oh.
even get me started on that. That'd be like a whole nother thing that I'm not going to get into right now. Um, I kind of wonder, like the way I perceive it, and I could be completely wrong, is I feel like it's a method of control. Like it's imperialism says, don't listen to these voices because you want to listen to us. We have the answers, which kind of makes me think that's why we have the witch hunts and stuff in the past.
Mm-hmm.
It's that whole, we want to be the only source of information. So don't listen to the spirits. Cut yourself off from any kind of intuition or anything like that, because then that empowers you, right? If you are hearing the answers directly from a source, then you're empowered. I probably just got myself in so much trouble. Yeah.
No. I think that's a really good point and a good like hack for people to get around it if they need it. But then I also see like intuition and like and then the like fault of certain definitions, especially like I'm looking at math, is like, I work in tech, and then that was part of like, oh, I had to get a real job that paid a certain amount of money, right? And but also, tech has issues too. But now, but then it's with in every algorithm, in every equation, there is an error, either a function or a variable, and most people just, I guess, they try to estimate it loosely, but they kind of don't really they don't really pay that much attention to the error. Like they're like, oh, the line is this way, and then the error is it's like another term to think about. But I think it really, like, later in my life now, I've kind of been really leaning into the error part, because that's the only thing that differentiates you from the next person. Is like the error is like the voices you hear, or like the randomness you experience, the people that you meet. Like kind of like looking a little bit more into all the error, or all the like noise that's around you, and kind of like reading more into that. And that's also why I think, like, like divination, which is which is at its simple, right? You could take like yarrow sticks, or you could take rocks that you find on the street and just like, throw it and have it show you like its side, right? But then that can tell you something if you like do it more often enough that you see patterns and things like that. So I think it's like I think that one-time definitions, I'm trying to draw it back to your question. One-time definitions are like, don't really work all the time, every time. And I think that's how people get stuck, is because they look at other people's definitions of things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there is no right way. It's the right way is what is your right way. There's no overarching right way.
Yeah, and then so, some things like, oh, like not necessarily talking about like mental health, but like there, sometimes when you describe somebody and you're like, but you just try to do it in words, and everyone here is like really good with words, but then sometimes you just can't. It's something you see them and you feel their energy, and you're like, oh, it's the thing. There's a thing that they have, right?
Yes, I described somebody as a chaotic younger sibling energy, and other people were just like, yes, this is absolutely the chaotic sibling who's just stirring up things because they enjoy stirring up things and watching the effects afterwards, because they don't have to clean up the mess afterwards. They're like,
yeah, it's just like, I mean, words can do it, but then yes, sometimes. So then that's why, like even definitions, or like with anything, with rituals, with like anything that you're whatever person you're supposed to be, like kind of is lacking, and like, so that's why I think that's why maybe witchcraft and intuition and manifesting and all that stuff is getting more popular again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which kind of segues me into, because it's the intention when you're like throwing stones or something, it's your intention that kind of opens up that intuition, I think. And feel free to tell me like it's a different thought for you. But oh my gosh, I'm so glad you brought up technology, because I'm looking at technology and I'm saying, okay, if intention is so important, right, in working with things like this, what is ChatGPT? You know what I mean? Now we can do that. We can literally say, here's my intention. I'm not trying to dig us into a deep hole talking about the ethics of AI, just the function of it. I'm like seeing science and dark matter and all these things, and they're like, oh, if you take an atom over here and you do this thing to it, and then it happens, they've been married, and then it happens over there, and then I'm over here, totally the non-scientist, going, science and magic are becoming the same thing. So it is. I've been really excited to see this kind of merging of the probably so many people like but to see us merging into this where you really can think something and it becomes so, which is kind of to me like a very metaphysical concept, even though we are using computers and electronics and energy, which energy is electricity and all that kind of thing. So that's my take on it. Is I'm really excited to see the merging of intuition and spirituality with technology. And yes, I might be a cyborg someday, and I might regret these words, but right now I'm kind of interested to see where it goes. Not necessarily enthusiastic, cautious as well, but interested, definitely interested. Where do you guys see metaphysics and say magic and technology and science all kind of merging?
I joke that the I Ching is like a 1000 BC ChatGPT. And if you think about the algorithm, like the functions of how, generative AI was built and designed, it's very, very similar to the I Ching. I Ching was just created 3,000 years ago. So obviously it's within the limits of the technology at that time. And also during that time period, it wasn't seen as magic, or it is divination. But here's the thing. When you use the word divination in Western culture today, compared to what we mean when we say it was divination, when we say we were using the I Ching originally as divination, we meant we were using it as ChatGPT, because people were going to it, punching in questions, using a very set pattern, algorithmic pattern to churn out an answer, go into that book of that database to pull out. And every single time you go in, it creates new insights based on a database of information. And that insight is what you use to make decisions about life, which is why it's kind of very similar to how we're using ChatGPT. So are we using ChatGPT today as a form of divination? I think the line between what's science and what's magic and mysticism is not as clear or mutually exclusive in, I guess I would say, Shang Dynasty or ancient Chinese thinking. Whereas it's very, very mutually exclusive when you're talking, for example, about European philosophies and politics. So I think it's just very different to be able to convert one thought in one area and one time and place to another, where we are today. So I think it's one and the same. I was trying to get to my point. Basically, I think it's one and the same. I don't make that distinction, like this is science and this is not. I just think there is evidence-based, provable, like there's things that we have been able to prove and repeat, and it's evidence-based. And there's other things we don't really understand yet. Some of it is junk. A lot of it is junk. And some of it, there's something to it. We just don't have the knowledge and sophistication to understand why it works. But that doesn't mean you dismiss it. I think to dismiss that just because you don't have the science today to explain it is just as ignorant as like the total woo-woo new age person who dismisses science. So both ends of that, I think, is ignorant.
I agree. I like that.
And I'm just mentioning this just so I have a little bit more context, is that so I've been a data scientist and an attorney, so not that I know that much more than like anyone out there, but it's more like the algorithms part. I've always felt that algorithms, and because I start off with statistics in math, that it like it's like trying to put this like artistic line to human behavior. That's basically what statistics is trying to do, is trying to explain it in a simple, 4 or 5 letter word, or like, way to represent curves and things like that. So I thought it was beautiful in that way, and this the most nerdiest way ever. And then also like error, obviously, that I mentioned before. But so the culmination of ChatGPT and like LLMs are I think a human desire, is a curiosity. The thing that I'm a little bit pessimistic on is who is directing the algorithm, and who's making decisions on when to apply it and where to apply it. And then I think there's a lot of like short-term decisions that are not made in light of long-term decisions. And I think that has to do with not the algorithm. It has to do with the people that are employing the algorithm. And then so like that brings a little bit of pessimism, but then also like in believing kind of like the mysticism and like kind of history, and, you know, knowing that like obviously my ancestors lived for thousands of years, that I think that it will work out in a way that is like unexpected. And then also the and this is gonna hopefully doesn't sound too out there, but it's like the thing that has the most power in like the algorithms and the turning this ChatGPT, like it's not something we understand, but it's something that is going to do what it needs to do to like, you know, and have the end result that it needs. Like, so like I guess overcome evil, but like it's like if I was to be like, I don't know, overly short storying it or novelizing it, the ending, or trying to market the ending somehow.
That's actually very Taoist, unintentionally Taoist of you. It's basically, what's meant to be will be. And basically, nature always course corrects and gets itself back to wherever it needs to be, is sort of what I was hearing.
Oh, yeah, totally. Tapping into that.
I was thinking what I would like, my hope, I guess, back to Angela's question of like, what do I hope for a future? And it's like, I want AI to see all the bad cells in, because it's good in detecting like, you know, where it thinks cancer is going to show up, right? Because it has had all this data and, you know, the doctors have told it, hey, this eventually turns into cancer. Help find it. And that would be awesome. And going back also to our intuition thoughts, there was a woman, I want to say it was on like This American Life, or a podcast like that, where she could smell Parkinson's. Like she smelled it. She noticed her husband smelled different. He was diagnosed with Parkinson's, went to a Parkinson's support group. And then she's like, why do all of you smell like this? And I'm like, I want like that sort of intuition, because obviously we don't have a test for that yet, right? We don't know until you start exhibiting symptoms and, you know, get the diagnosis from a doctor. And I'm like, well, I would like to know much earlier than this. I would love to have that sort of intuition, you know, forewarning, right? That we'd all like to know a little bit more about what's going to happen in 5 years, in 10 years, or heck, 6 months, you know?
That's awesome. That actually reminds me of a little bit. I don't know why this reminds me of this, but I'm thinking of what you said when we first came on, that you don't like to play by the rules. And that's why you tend to lean towards fantasy. When I was practicing before in the United States, I was very rule and ritualistic. Everything was like, this has to be here, and I have to burn this type of incense at this time and say these words. And now my practice has just really kind of been like, what do you feel like today? Okay, that's what you're going to do. That's not it. Stop that. Go do this other thing, even though none of it makes sense, but just listen. And it always turns out perfect. Like that is exactly what I was supposed to do. Do you see, and there is that some people really think of it's a very rule-based thing to practice anything. And then there's the other side of it. Now I feel like I've seen both sides. Where do you guys feel that practicing anything like this is? Like, is it, do you tend to be more rule-based, or do you tend to be more intuition, whatever, I'm just going to go do this thing now, because hug that tree because my inner voice has told me to.
My practice is definitely more writing. So I have learned like it doesn't need to be the perfect setup depending on what I'm trying to do, right? Because I currently have like 2 external monitors plus this laptop. I have a notebook if I want to just give myself no distractions, right? Because like leave my cell phone at home, go out somewhere and write out there, where I can't be like, should I Google when this was invented? Like when I was trying to write like a secondary world fantasy that was set like in 1890s New York City, I kept finding myself Googling like, when was this invented? When was this in common use? I'm like, no, just let that go, write the story, and then you can fill in the details and fine tune it later. And I felt like that practice was definitely more like, the rule I need to set for myself is like, don't do these things. Don't distract yourself from the writing, because this is flowing now. Let it flow now, and then when it's not flowing, then you can do all the things where you're just like, when was this invented? Can I name can I give them this name? Is this like a Tiffany problem in fantasy, right? And it has changed, I guess, with time. Once like that muscle gets stronger, right? You're just like, oh, okay, I know how I want this story to go. I am familiar with the 5-act structure that I want to complete. And we're having a moment of going, there's an editor, there's a special call, for a submission. I know I'm familiar with that editor's work. I would like to make her cry.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Not
And leaning into like I'm gonna make that happen. And it's funny because I let some other people read it before I submit it, and they were not her, and they were still like, this made me teary. Like, yes. Like I feel like that's my practice of being like, where am I directing this intention? I'm going to make this guest editor cry. I'm going to, write a story that I have not seen but I want out there, right? Like I think my first horror story was a Western because and my gut reaction was, I don't like Westerns. They don't treat Chinese people well. They don't treat women well.
Mm-hmm.
And then my brain goes, but we can. It's like, oh yeah, yes we can. So it's directing, your magnifying glass to what your intent is.
I like that. That's actually like Grant Morrison created some of his writing as a sigil, like the entire book was a sigil, and that's kind of what that reminds me of.
I would say my magical practice as well is both. I think sometimes there are aspects where I will go straight into the Daozang, the Taoist canons, and look up a ritual and feel it has to be very strictly performed. How I source the ingredients for the ritual is really, really strict and regimented. I will go to great pains to leverage my privilege to figure out where I can import the ingredients and even grow my own ingredients, and when you grow them by certain moon phases and astrological correspondences. So extremely strict in terms of trying to follow and comply with a grimoire tradition. And then other times, because you do have to lean into your intuition, if I have an objective or an intention, as Wenwen was saying, if I have an intention, then I do have to be open-minded and receptive to what is the best course of action or what's the best path to achieve that intention. And so then in that case, I'll be a lot more open-minded, chaotic, and just kind of go with the flow and do whatever I want in every single moment. And it does seem like there's no rhyme or reason. It's very irrational, but I get the job done. And so I think being able to go with the flow, sometimes being very strict, regimented, and disciplined with yourself to the point of, almost an extreme sense of chaos, because it's just that OCD, versus when to let go of everything and just lean into the moment and be free form. So I think it's important to be able to do both. I think that's what a holistic, balanced practitioner would be able to do, both as a writer and also as a magical practitioner.
Oh yeah, I think for a lot of things, for writing especially, I do try to write every day. If it's whether it's like 100 words or like 1,000 words, it kind of just depends. And then also I can read my own energy, and then at some point translates to like magical practices. Like you have to be like nice to yourself, and then understand like where you are now, and also tune yourself to the seasons, like harmonize yourself to your environment. I think certain seasons I'm like more like open than others. And I think that's fine. And then, as ladies, we have moon cycles as well. So tapping into that is also really helpful. And then as a framework too, I also look at my astrology and who I am. And so I do have I have a stellium in my 6th house, which is like the daily rituals. So, but I'm also Sagittarius. So it's like very, that took me a while to figure out. So I do need a practice every day, but I also have to give myself space, and that space has to be freedom, but also ritual. So it's like this kind of like balance I have to keep between the two. But just as an example, like this year I decided to do the Ancestral grimoire. I think it's Nancy Hendrickson.
Oh, Nancy Henderson, yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
And I did you write the intro for that?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so that one is monthly. So then now I have like a monthly. I change monthly, but I also have like stuff in between the month to kind of like do whatever I want. Like for instance, like pull a card every day. But then if I don't pull a card every day, I'm cool. It's fine. It's like I'm not going to stress out. But I'll do the monthly thing, and I'm like learning by month. But I'm able to like, take whatever like weather is weather element is July. So I'm able to kind of just twist and turn into like what kind of weather I want to look at, what kind of practice I want to look at through the month, because the grimoire doesn't tell you exactly what to look at every second. So it's kind of structured in that way. And then also I can build those like themes into like stories that I write too. Like, oh, this person's in a bad rainstorm. Like, what happens? Fantasy or horror kind of type of things too. So it kind of helps me to have a guiding post. Otherwise, I can get like super chaotic and like ADHD style. But I've also kind of like learned that it was that has been like environmental also, and also kind of like influenced by my own practices and like how much I trusted myself. Because the more I leaned into, oh, I have to do this every day, the more kind of like depressed I used to get at like not doing the thing. And then so just become in this like vicious cycle. And then you're like blaming your own tendencies for something. But then instead relaxing into it, but giving yourself a little bit of structure was kind of like a thing took me like 40 plus years to learn. So yeah, balance is great, and kind of understanding your constitution, maybe some astrology if you're into that, is kind of like very helpful to be nice to yourself.
What are the planets in your 6th house stellium? Is one of them Mercury?
I'm pretty sure. Yes.
That makes sense.
Is that the vibe I give you?
Well, that and what you said. So, data scientist. So science plus law plus writing. Like that's all 6th house vibe.
Yeah. Oh, yep. I'm on it.
Like that. The way when you're talking, I'm thinking of like ritual as being like almost like the bones, and then we fill in the flesh as like the chaos and the intuition. So that's the way I'm going to look at it now. The bones.
Yeah, I mean, so that's kind of amazing. That's been what astrology's been around forever. You can get your chart for free. It's like divination a little bit for yourself.
Yeah, and just a little thing about astrology. Okay, I never really believed in it, and I'm gonna plug Benebell just a little bit because she did read my first chart, and then I would sit there, and I am the person that always needs proof for everything. So I'm in my Google Calendar putting things in. Okay, well, this thing is supposed to happen at this time, and this energy is supposed to be at that time. And it really works. And so now I'm just kind of like, I totally get why kings would have astrologers and chart the nations and things, because I have started the HWA and it really works. You know what I mean? It's like, yes, you can see this thing coming up. It helps you conserve your energy when it's going to be wasted. I really am a big believer in astrology now. I'm still terrible at it. So I go get it done by other people. It's like way easier. So complicated. What I would like to talk about now is the whole reason we're here. Because we're talking about Coven of the East, which is getting ready to come out. And I would love to hear why you guys wrote what you did for this. And both of them are amazing and beautiful. This just very biased plug here. This was an amazing, incredible book. And I cannot wait to see this come out. And I just see it as we have this lineage started with these books that we are addressing specifically women in a darker space, horror and horror adjacent and metaphysical topic, things that are normally frowned upon. And we are bringing these out. And now we have like 6 or 7 books that I can personally think of that have kind of spawned from this and become, I'm going to say, a movement. And so Coven of the East is the latest one that's coming out. And I personally think it's amazing. Pauline is amazing.
The best.
Pauline is amazing working with, and you guys are both amazing. And so I just kind of want to, while we're here, let's talk about what you wrote and why.
Sure. Mine is a Western. It is the shape-shifting snake woman or the skeleton who has she's been defeated by the Monkey King, and because I'm diaspora, I'm just like, no, what if you have to make it to somewhere safe, right? So she goes across, and then she's like, I might have a little adventure in the West, and it's a bit of a revenge tale because again, women weren't treated great in the American West, and I want some justice for them. And it didn't happen in history, but I'm gonna make it happen in my story. And yeah, I think I am just full of revenge tales because, you know, if I'm playing God, it's going to be a just place where the bad people get punished, and some really creepy people make that happen, even if she dissolves into bones. Yeah, it was just a lot of fun writing a story about magical Asian women, like setting things to rights.
Oh, is this you mentioned your horror and Western before? Is this part of like a set of stories that you have?
It's funny. It might be because
Oh,
the
selection.
previous one was based on the I want to say it was 1871 massacre in LA.
Mm.
And that one was it's called Ghost Festival in the Desert, and I guess this one is another massacre in the desert due to me. So yes, I guess
Yeah.
it is a lot of me feeling like, you know what, this part of history really angers me, and I wish somebody, you know, can right these wrongs. So yeah, I guess it is me still being angry at it, and treating it the way that um like ChatGPT couldn't have written my story because there aren't enough of my stories for it to have fed on to have created it, right? Like it has a bajillion fairy tales, but doesn't have a whole bunch of Asian women being like, nah, one moment, I'm gonna fix this.
That's amazing.
Yep.
Yeah, and I feel like so many Asian Americans and Asian diaspora read about these stories in real life, or like go to like an Asian American or like a museum in like whatever mining town. I think I went to Bishop. I think that's one of my recent. And then there's like a little cubby hole area for like, oh, Asians were here, and then there's like a broken cup there, you know. And then but then you know that they were like slaughtered and the Chinatown was burned down. But then, you know, but what do you go there, you feel angry, and then what do you do with it? And so, what do you do with it? You read Wen Yang's story. I think that's one outlet for you. I think, or for me too.
Yeah. Well, and that's the power of the artist and the writer is we are choosing the stories that we want to bring forward to the future. And so in a way, manifesting a new future.
Well, there's parallel universes, so you might be in the future manifesting a different past.
Did you say the Monkey King makes a cameo?
Oh, it's after she has been defeated by the Monkey King. So it's after
Oh, got it.
she's not a great character in the fight with the Monkey King because she's just trying to eat the monk, and he keeps, you know, preventing that from happening because, you know, that's the protagonist. He has to be protected. So I'm like, no, let's give her a redemption story.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
I went the route of
Benebell.
I went the route of nonfiction. So I mean, I think I just wrote an essay. First, it was one of the accounts of witchcraft that I really loved from the 10th century. It was from a 10th century Song Dynasty text, and it accounts the story of a Taoist hermit who goes to see this famed witch up in a mountain because she knows everything. And so he asks her 3 questions, and from that I derive what is the witch's path for us who are descendants of the dragon. So I talk about the 3 keystones of the witch's path from a Chinese perspective. And then I account 6 witches from Chinese history and lore, or Wu shamanistic witchcraft. And so it's kind of an article, but I think it's interesting because it does talk about the lineage that they establish. And so when, you know, you said the title was Coven of the East, this is what I thought of. This is the lineage that we all inherit. And so how do you derive ideas of practice and also ideas of being and embodying a witch as an Asian woman from these stories from history?
Yeah, no, I think I read that and I was amazed because then a lot of the social media and like popular media, they refer to very specific like Greek goddesses and Egyptian goddesses, which I think they're fabulous. And I have them on my altar as well. But then I always go back to thinking, you know, what are the Asian goddesses or you know, or of that, or different lineages that I can also tap into that have slightly different personalities, because like the ones I've seen online don't speak to me as much as the ones I've like read about in like Benebell's writing and in her books. So I think that's an amazing essay for people to get started and get ideas.
Yeah, I agree. And it does tend to, we're talking about homogenization. I feel like it's Kuan Yin. And I'm not saying that Kuan Yin is not important, but Kuan Yin is the deity that represents it typically all of Asian anything. It seems like people will bring that name up to me like, oh, a deity. Oh, yeah, Kuan Yin. But there's so many and it's so rich. It's a little bit of a disservice. Definitely not saying Kuan Yin is not important, though.
Yeah. But she still, embodies like the standard femininity that, I guess, my parents are like, oh, wish you were more feminine, like that she still embodies that. So then some of these other goddesses are not like that. So that's kind of refreshing as well. They're like fighters and warriors and whatnot. And revengey.
Yeah,
One I didn't write about. Oh, sorry.
Oh no, go ahead, please.
Oh, one I didn't write about, but a common patron goddess among those who are spirit mediums or in Taoist mysticism is Shi Wangmu, the Queen Mother of the West. And I think in terms of feminism and understanding feminism from our culture is really interesting, just the history of how she was depicted. So in all of the older texts, pre-Qin dynasty texts, the Queen Mother of the West was a feral goddess. She wore animal prints. She had wild, crazy hair. She had fangs. She was considered a very feral goddess, a dark goddess. She was the darkest of the numinous void. And she was very, very revengeful and very chaotic and very, very violent. And then somehow during the Han Dynasty, when Confucianism took more of a hold in terms of our cultural ethos, she got a huge makeover. And now anytime you see post-Han depictions of the Queen Mother of the West, she looks like an empress. She's very well cultured. She's in empress robes, and she's beautifully, has the headdress and everything. And so it's just really interesting to see what the implications are there in terms of the feminist movements in our traditions, because of how she was depicted over the various millennia. But yeah, she's a big one she's a big patron goddess among those who are practitioners.
Cool.
Awesome. I could see all of our eyes sparkling, Benebell, as you were describing her. Everybody's face here was kind of like the TV, the little sparkly eyes. There was a lot of love happening in that description. I think my final question would be the question that started this whole anthology between Pauline and I, which was, where is the Asian magic? So if somebody were to ask you that, where would you tell them? Whose books would you recommend? Where would you guide them to access further study? Obviously, I'm going to say that they're right there. But where are some other places that we could introduce other people to these ideas and this study?
Oh, this is not my wheelhouse. I wandered into paganism in high school and wandered very quickly out because I felt it was very white and very a little bit consumerism, because it was like you have to buy these crystals and candles and all that, and I was just like, you don't understand. I make $6 an hour. Like that is not going to happen. Yeah, I remember trying to protect myself, like visualizing shields and runes on myself to be like, okay, I am protected for going into this customer-facing job as a teenager. So yeah, all the things I read, I think were, again, very white suburban white teen focused from 2006 probably. So I'd love to know what your resources are.
I think that's a great question. There's a really big gap there, both in the Chinese speaking world and in the English speaking world. You really don't see a lot of practitioners who are native practitioners who are writing books in English to be able to help those who are Asian Americans. And then if you're talking about in China, for example, or Taiwan, Singapore as well, a lot of it, I guess it would be couched under Taoist mysticism, spirit mediumship, or Wu shamanism, those types of categories. And a lot of that is still extremely male dominated. You don't see voices there. So almost all of the big names, all of the anything, it's male dominated. And because it still has the legacy of Confucianism, especially in East Asia, when you do read the texts, I find that I have to really kind of read between the lines and deconstruct what I'm reading to get to other aspects of the core principles I'm looking for. A lot of times I have to go back. I kind of don't read anything post Han. I feel like you have to go back to pre-Chen text and read it in classical Chinese to get away from all of the things that have the heavy cultural and social influences that happen post Han. And so unless you are reading classical Chinese, like the first primary sources, it's really hard to find anything on Taoist mysticism that makes sense for people like us.
Yeah. Let me get on that. Read classical Chinese. I mean, but ChatGPT could help us with that probably. And I think before I got into this, like in like when I was in high school, I even was trying to tap into some of this like I guess mysticism. I started doing yoga. I did a yoga teacher training, and I read some like very pivotal, like I guess translated English books. I think one of them, I don't think this is translation, but the autobiography of a yogi, like that type of genre. But also it's still also very male dominated as well. And then so I think that's why I try to have experiences that would be more metaphysical. Like I did Vipassana meditation, which is a silent meditation retreat for 10 days. You can go to, I think they have one in every state that you actually can go to for free. And so kind of like tapping into my own resources, I think at some point, but obviously I don't have that much time anymore. So I do like watch a lot of YouTube videos, and then I do pick up some of those more commercial, I guess, witchcraft books. Because it's like interesting to see what other people are doing, and then of course looking at Benebell's text for kind of more like serious studying.
Oh,
Yeah.
thank
Yeah, and I want to finish by saying how important this is, how important this anthology is, not because Pauline and I are doing it and these amazing writers are in it, but because we're keeping those voices going. And so from my personal perspective, I grew up, there was spiritualism was huge in our family, but don't talk about it, don't talk to it, ignore it because, the devil. But then we would have these things where my mom would have a dream that predicted a flood, that my grandmother also had that dream. And then I have these dreams, and we would have this sub-conversation that then disappears. And so then my family apparently was Yuda, and that was a really important thing. It was everything that we brought over, but don't talk about it. So what does that tell us? It's just erased. And now in Okinawa, and I may be butchering this, so anybody who's an expert, there's so few books to actually access this, but they have the Nodo priestesses do a ceremony for Amamikyo, who touched down, and we still know the place where she touched down when she created the world. And I think it's every 7 years this ritual happens. And for the last 14, it has not happened anymore because there's not enough Nodo to continue it. And so that's where I'm like, and this story disappearing because it wasn't allowed to be talked about. It, and that is why we are here, and what you guys are doing and what we have created with this is so important, because our stories will disappear. They are disappearing. And so thank you, everybody here, for being storytellers and making magic with your work. And I mean, stories, nonfiction and fiction. I just kind of group it all up together. That is the magic. So I can't thank you guys enough for bringing that to this anthology, and Pauline for working with me, because she's amazing.
Oh, and Angela's awesome. She of course, was one of the original starters of kind of bringing Asian American stories, Asian diaspora stories to light, with Tortured Willows. Right? Was that one of the first ones?
Black Crane started it with Lee Murray and Genevieve Flynn, and then Tortured Willows we followed on with that.
Okay,
and then Unquiet Spirits, and then Silk and Sinew, which is Katie. Christy. Oh my gosh. Sorry.
Yeah, that came out this year, and I think it's selling really well. So that's really good.
Yeah, because people are hungry for these stories. They do want to know. They do want to know this. The question that we asked, which started this, which is where is all the Asian magic, is obviously a question that everybody wants to know. So thank you guys for bringing the answers.
Oh yeah, and so there's obviously so many other authors that are not on this call. I think it's more like a scheduling thing. And so they submitted videos talking about their pieces. So we'll also have that in another set of compiled videos for people to share too. So people are not here. They'll be in the other places that we can post, and then obviously comment and interact as you feel inspired to.
Yeah,
it's a fantastic lineup.
Yeah, it's I know. I'm so excited. I was so psyched to get everyone's pieces, and obviously there's people that we didn't include in piece, which is always really sad because everyone has such great stuff, and hopefully there'll be another iteration of this. So anyone who didn't get a chance to come in this time will have another chance.
Yeah, I agree. So
awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay, I can cut this part off.
Stop recording.